Can I just add, that's a good question, I think. You know, okay, so I think what you're getting at is, when do you have this right to remain silent? When does it apply? We learn about it, and we say it like it's one word, but it's 3 words, right? Right? No, 4 words. Right to remain silent. When does it apply? When can you assert it? When can you assert it? So I got clients coming in, and they're like, well, I was stopped, and the cop asked me if I had anything in the car, and I thought, well, you know, he probably smells it, and he's going to search it anyway. And so I just got this feeling that if I just was honest, that it'd be better for me. So I just told him. And I ended up with this ticket. And sometimes the officers will even say, if, you know, you can do this the easy way or the hard way, it's up to you. So just make it easy on yourself and be honest. And so they tell the cop, and then they tell me, I say, well, why'd you do that? And they go, well, because I thought, you know, well, do you know that you didn't have to? Well, I didn't have to answer those questions? I mean, I'm like, no, you didn't. You know, you have a right to remain silent. Did that apply then, or is that like for a court? Is that a trial thing? No. It applies, you know, it applies. When you're in front of an officer, and an officer's talking to you and he's asking you questions, that's when it applies. There's no court, there's no judge, there's no lawyer. You got that right. You got a right to vote. Right? Same thing, it's your right. So that's a good question. And I thank you for asking.
Craig, I want to follow up on that. You also have the right, if an officer just walks up to you and starts to ask you questions, you have the right not to answer and walk away.
Yeah.
And you should, you know, again, if the officer wants to go further, they may, but you certainly don't have to stand there and answer any questions. You can assert that right from the very beginning.
But if the officer orders you to stay, you need to follow the officer's orders. And maybe the officer thinks he's got a reasonable suspicion to stop you because a block over the jewelry store was robbed and you look just like the person. He said, wait, I want to talk to you. You don't have the right to walk away if the officer orders you to stay. And this is, you know, I think this becomes a problem for the police sometimes in Missoula, where we get people out protesting on the streets or something is happening out there and people think that they have a right to engage officers when they're in the middle of conducting an arrest. They have a right to challenge what officers are doing. They have a right to disobey an officer's command. You don't have that right out on the street. Don't do it. You can get prosecuted for that. The time to contest all that stuff is later. So don't get in a fight with a police officer.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Shannon, could I?
Yeah.
There were several anonymous questions relating directly to what you asked, talked about, Mr. King-Ries. In that, how do you, and the exact wording is, what's a polite way to decline a search if the officer doesn't get upset or suspicious? There were several others that says, how can I ask if my requirement to talk to the police is over or not without pissing the cop off? And maybe Mr. Lemcke could address that better, you know, from his experience. But there were several questions as to how do I know when my limitations are done.
Well, since it was directed at me, I'll answer, but I can't answer for everybody. If the cop asks you, do you have any dope in your car, you can always say, do I have to answer that? And the cop better know whether you have to answer that or not. And he shouldn't lie to you. He'll say, well, no, you don't have to answer. I was just asking. So, because it sure smells like it. Exactly. That's exactly the point. So we had a reason to ask, but you're not sure what your rights are. Do I have to let you search my car? You know, well, no, you don't. It's an option. That's why it's called consent. Oh, okay. Then no. Or then yes. But that should be the interaction. However, understand that in the real world there are cops out there who have different personalities and they employ a little known but widely used method, and that's called contempt of cop. You pissed him off, so you're going to jail. But I'm not denying that can occur. But if you do it politely, if you just ask them, if you can exercise the right they should be equipped to give you the edge.
And I mean, most of the time the question comes up a little differently. It's sort of like, you know, you get pulled over for speeding or failing to signal, and they get your license and registration, and they hand you the ticket, and then they say, you know, have a good night, and, you know, how's it going? Well, you wouldn't mind if I searched. You don't have any drugs or guns in the car, do you? No. You wouldn't mind if I searched, would you? And when they ask it that way, it's harder, it seems harder for some people to assert their right in that situation.
And I think that's why we're all here tonight, because we've got young people who are intimidated by guys with guns. And when I ask a question, it's different than when Craig asks the question, because I'm standing here with a gun and the authority to take away your liberty. That frightens me too. So you've got to take a breath and say, okay, a free society can be difficult. I'm going to ask, do I have the right to refuse?
And I think you say, may I leave now? You always remain polite, may I leave now? And if the officer says no, well, your ability to fight that down the road has just gone way up, because he's now detained you. You're not staying there voluntarily. So you say politely, may I go now? And you know, he's going to have to say yes if he's got no reasonable suspicion, no reason for stopping you. Right?
Yeah, I think, you know, we can get really cocky in here, and I want to make sure though that you understand. Josh is right, and you read this pamphlet that the ACLU's published. It talks about it. Be polite. Don't be a smartass, because you're going to lose. The cop will he'll assert his power over you, and he'll throw you in jail, because Jim's talking about this contempt of cop. You'll end up in jail. You may end up winning the case in the long run, but you're going to sit in jail. Be polite. But here's what I'd ask. Well, the question was, when do you know, how do you ask the cop without pissing him off, and when do you know you can leave? You simply ask him, am I under arrest? Right? Do I have the right to refuse to answer your question? With all due respect, use those words, right? Officer, I mean, please, I'm not, you know, I'm not a lawyer, so I need to ask you, do I have to answer this question? Be polite. Play Columbo, right? You don't know. Am I under arrest?
I'm too stoned to really follow you.
Am I under arrest? And ask him then, if he says, no, you're not under arrest, then say, am I free to leave? Those three things, okay? Right? Do I have to answer this question, am I under arrest, am I free to leave? I think they're in here too. That's what I recommend you do. And the problem is though that you got to trust that he'll put in his report what he told you. You know, you got to just trust that, I suppose, unless you have a video camera going.